But we begin tonight with just 4 days to go until the last votes are cast in what has been an election season unlike anything we've ever seen before. An election that last night, once again, entered uncharted territory when Donald Trump, a felon on probation awaiting sentencing, sat down with one of, if not the biggest purveyors of Russian propaganda and white supremacy ever to darken the shores of cable news, fired Fox host Tucker Carlson. During the event in Arizona, not only did Trump call President Joe Biden a stupid bastard and Vice President Kamala Harris, quote, a sleaze bag, in true autocratic fashion, he took it even further, openly fantasizing about violent retribution against one of his political opponents, former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
Now, before you dismiss that bile as just Trump being Trump, remember the Supreme Court just this year, in the case of U.S. versus Trump, ruled that he had absolute immunity for acts he committed as president, which the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals said could include using the military to kill a political rival.
Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That's an official act in order to SEAL Team 6?
He would have to be and would speedily be, impeached and convicted before the criminal prosecution.
I asked you a yes or no question. Could a president who ordered SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival who was not impeached, would he be subject to criminal prosecution?
If he were impeached and convicted first. And
so your answer is no.
My answer is qualified yes. There's a political process that would have to occur under the structure of our Constitution, which would require impeachment and conviction by the Senate.
And while his friends at Fox are laughing off what amounted to a death threat against a former congresswoman, reactions from people who are actually serious about our democracy have been swift. The Attorney General of Arizona says that her office is investigating whether Trump's comments amount to a death threat. Cheney herself responded in a social media post saying, "This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death. We cannot entrust our country and our freedom to a petty, vindictive, cruel, unstable man who wants to be a tyrant." But if you expected any of Cheney's former Republican colleagues to stand up for her, well, think again. The reaction on the right has mostly been crickets. Some have just made excuses. But Trump is doubling down. Today in Michigan, saying this.
I think that Liz Cheney is a disaster. All she wants to do is blow people up. She's a war hawk and a dumb one at that. And if you ever put her into the field of battle, she'd be the first one to chicken out. She wouldn't fight. She'd chicken out so fast.
Well, that's rich, coming from a guy who dodged the draft, claiming bone spurs. And let's be clear, this is not the first time Trump has threatened violence against those who've opposed him. Trump has amplified posts on his social media site calling for televised military tribunals for Cheney. He's floated the idea of executing Joint Chiefs Chairman Mark Milley. And he's talked about sicking the military on, quote, the enemy within, which includes American citizens, and named Congress members Adam Schiff and former Speaker Pelosi. And in the final days of this election, this vile, violent rant is a stark reminder of just how unambiguously different the two choices for the president are. On one hand, you have Vice President Kamala Harris, who's running on a message of unity and hope for the future, someone who, despite everything, is offering Republicans a seat at the table. And on the other hand, there's Trump, whose entire campaign has been centered around retribution for fellow Americans he calls his enemies, a point Vice President Harris made today.
This must be disqualifying. Anyone who wants to be president of the United States who uses that kind of violent rhetoric is clearly disqualified and unqualified to be president. Representative Cheney is a true patriot who has shown extraordinary courage in putting country above party. Trump is increasingly, however, someone who considers his political opponents the enemy, is permanently out for revenge, and is increasingly unstable and unhinged.
Joining me now is Michael Steele, former chairman of the Republican National Committee and co-host of The Weekend right here on MSNBC, and George Conway, conservative attorney and president of the Anti-Psychopath PAC. Thank you both for being here. Michael, this must be disqualifying. That's what Vice President Harris said. You used to run this political party, the Republicans. Why isn't it disqualifying?
It is disqualifying, and they know it's disqualifying. So let's just put it out there. Not only is it disqualifying for Donald Trump, but it's disqualifying for every member of the United States Congress and every member of the United States Senate who have not spoken up to this point or against it. We need to know where you stand as your constituents go to the polls. Do you believe that a former member or current member of Congress could be so threatened by an individual like Donald Trump, who could potentially be the next president, and there are no repercussions for that? Where would you stand on that? You know, to be honest, Joy, I'm just sick of the BS at this point. The excuse making, the lying, the backtracking, all of the noise that you do here is there to undermine what you and I see, what we know, what we hear coming from Donald Trump. Not just today, but from the first day he came down the escalator. So at some point, this country's got to get its head out of its behind when it comes to Donald Trump and be honest about the thing in front of it.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we have a Halloween parade on Main Street in Western Pennsylvania, in which they had a float depicting what was supposed to be Vice President Harris being pulled on a chain behind a truck with snipers on it, essentially recreating a lynching on Main Street in Pennsylvania, in Mount Pleasant, a town called Mount Pleasant, for the love of God, George Conway. That's what Donald Trump is encouraging in his followers, in the people who love him, in MAGA. That's the kind of behavior that he is encouraging. And yet, as our dear friend Nicole Wallace pointed out earlier today, Republicans are silent, other than the ones who've already crossed over into the anti-autocrat party, and there are many of them. God bless those who have crossed over, like Liz Cheney. Where is George W. Bush? George W. Bush had the job of president. His former vice president's daughter has now received what the Arizona AG is investigating as a possible death threat from a guy on probation who's going to be sentenced 2 weeks after this election. Where are the Bushes? Where's Jeb? Where's George?
The list can go on and on and on. I mean, there are so many Republicans who are simply averting their eyes and zipping their mouths shut and pretending that what they know and what they can see is not there. And it's a complete disgrace. You know, Donald Trump at least has an excuse. It's not a legal excuse. It would never suffice to establish an insanity defense to the various criminal charges he faces. But he is a sick man. He is a deranged man. He has certain well-defined personality disorders, severe personality disorders, antisocial personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder, among others. I'm a broken record on this. But if you go through the checklist of the characteristics that fit those diseases, he has them. And they are the exact same diseases that cult leaders, dangerous cult leaders, the people who, Jim Jones at Georgetown, Hitler, Stalin, all manner of evil people throughout history who developed cult-like followings and engaged in incredible destruction, he fits that bill. And so everyone who's out there and says, oh, that's just the way he talks, that's baloney. I was going to use a stronger word there. And it is also, in the case of the people who are closest to him, an incredible lie. And, you know, the Republican Party has become suffused with lies. And the biggest lie that has been told by people who are in the Trump White House and by people in the campaign now and by all the people implicitly who refuse to speak out about him now is that somehow he resembles, that he is a normal person. He just simply says a few outrageous things here and there. He's a sick man and a dangerous man. And the notion that we are still discussing the possibility that he could, in a matter of days, be elected president is profoundly disturbing.
Amazing.
Yeah, elected president with more power than presidents typically have, thanks to John Roberts and the conservative majority on the Supreme Court, who's essentially said he would be our king. And, you know, I mean, you mentioned Jim Jones, and to go back to you, Michael Steele, for a moment, people forget that Jim Jones ordered those followers to drink the Kool-Aid because he was facing imminent arrest because of the assassination of a member of Congress. He knew he was going to prison. And so he decided everybody dies because he didn't want to go to jail. That is why the Jim Jones thing happened. And those who wouldn't drink the Kool-Aid were shot down. And so Donald Trump, to George Conway's point, fits all of these characteristics of that kind of autocrat. But he's also surrounded by people who have the same sort of defects in their morality and character. Elon Musk, who's running his ground game, Michael, literally, I want to put this on the screen, is tricking workers, some of them black, white, indifferent, whoever, in the back of a van with no seatbelts, riding around, tricked and threatened to go and do this supposed get out the vote effort that doesn't exist.